Okay, we're holding on Chavtes Amid Aleph. We began the Gemara in which discussed that when the Mishnah said that the Tapuach, that the center ash pile was 300 kor, that was an exaggeration. Rava, Smakim and Lamed, taught us that as well we find other times that of such exaggerations, of a guzma. For example, when it says that the carbon Tamid drank from a cup of gold, that was as well an exaggeration. And Rav Ami taught us, and that was the line that we concluded with, Divrei Torah Lashon Havai. The Torah sometimes speaks in exaggeratory terms. Divrei Neviim Lashon Havai. The Neviim speak in exaggeratory terms. And Divrei Chachamim Lashon Havai. The Chachamim as well speak in exaggeratory terms. And now we bring the Raya to all these cases. We're about 15 lines from the bottom. Divrei Torah Lashon Havai, says the Gemara that the Torah speaks in exaggeratory terms. Where do we find such a thing? Says the Gemara, you know where we find it? By the Miraglim. Tichsev, it says in Devarim, with regard to the size of Eretz Yisroel, Arim Gedolos Ubetzuros Bashamayim, large cities that went all the way up to heaven. Says the Gemara, Bashamayim Sal Gedaitach, do you actually think that the cities were in heaven? Ella Guzma. Rather, what must it mean? It must mean it's exaggeratory. So again, that's a raya that the Torah itself speaks in such terms. Now we have a raya that the Chachamim speak in exaggeration. Hadamaran, that which we said in our Mishnah, that the Tapuach, that the center sheep was 300 kor, as well as Vishkos the Tamid v'Koshel Zav says that the Tamid who drank from a cup of gold. Dibri Neviim Lashon Havai, where do we find that the Neviim were in Nach? Do we find exaggerations? The Chsiv, the Pasuk in the Malachim teaches us with regard to Shlomo HaMelech becoming king, the coronation of Shlomo HaMelech. It says all the people came, and what does it say? That they Cholam Haaretz Mechalalim Bechalalim. They were playing pipes, v'goymer, etc. Vatibaka haaretz l'koilam, and the earth broke open due to their sound of the instruments. Of course, does it mean that the earth broke open? Absolutely not. Rather, says the Gemara, that's the raya that we find in Nach, exaggerations. Amar Rav Yanai bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel. B'shloisha mekames divrei chacham lashon havai. 3 times the Chachamim spoke in exaggerations. What are the 3 times? Elohein Tapuach, as we've seen. And then there's a case of a Gefen and a case of a Paroches. The case of the Gefen and the Paroches is the curtain that separates between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim inside the Bais Hamikdash. And the Gefen, the vine, we'll see in a moment. Says the Gemara, Rav Yanai bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel, when he's telling us that there's these 3 times the Chachamim speak in exaggeration, this is coming la'afuke midarava. This is coming to exclude from Rava. Titanan, we learned in a Mishnah, Hishku as a Tamid, Bekoishal Zav, or 5 lines from the bottom of Chavtes Amid Aleph, that the Mishnah taught us that the carbon Tamid, as we've seen, drinks from a cup of gold. The Amar Rava, and Rava taught Guzma. The animal didn't actually drink from a cup of gold. Kamash Malon. So when Rav Yanai bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel says the 3 cases of Tapuach, Gefen, and Paroches, he means to say honey in, hasam loy. Why? Why does Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Rav Yanai bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Yonasan, not agree with the case of the carbon Tamid drinking Bekoishal Zav? Sounds like a crazy exaggeration. Why does he learn the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, you know what he says? Ein aniyus b'makom ashirus. An incredible term. What does that mean? What that means is the Gemara is teaching us that Rav Yanai bar Nachmani and Rav Yonasan actually holds that the carbon Tamid did indeed drink from a kaishal zav. What does that mean? The animal drank from a kaishal zav, from a golden cup? Yes! Why? It's the Bais Hamikdash. Ein aniyus b'makom ashirus. When you're in the king's house, everything is opulent. Even the animals will drink from a golden cup. And therefore, Rav Yanai bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel held that even the carbon Tamid in the Bais Hamikdash indeed drank from a golden cup. Says the Gemara. Now let's explain the three cases of Rav Yanai bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel. 3 lines on the bottom. Tapuach, we know what that one is. Hadamarim, we've seen that already. That's the ash pile in the middle of the Mibei'ach between 300 core. Gefen, the vine. Titania, we learned in a brayso. Gefen zav. Haisa medes. Al Pesach ha'echal. There was a golden vine. Says the Mishnah in Midais that stood at the entrance of the Heichal, the entrance of the Bais Hamikdash. Umudla al gabe kloin sais, and it hung upon posts. And anyone who wanted to bring a golden leaf to the Bais Hamikdash as we turn over to Chavtes, Amid Beis, if you wanted to bring a golden leaf, oy garagir, or you wanted to bring a golden grape, oy eshkol, or a cluster of grapes, what would you do? Maybe you were allowed to bring golden items, and the kohanim would hang it on the vine. And Amar Rav Elazar Rav Sadaik, Maisa Haya, there was a story. And there were 300 kohanim that had to pick up this golden vine to move it. Why? Because of its incredible weight. That this golden vine, with all the golden donations of people, everyone wanted a chelek, to have their golden leaf, to have their golden grape at the entrance to the Bais Hamikdash. So where's the guzma? The guzma is not what you would think. You hear this, you think, you know what the guzma is? Was there really a golden vine? Really? I could come to the Bais Hamikdash with a golden leaf? That's not a guzma, that's not an exaggeration. Yes! It's the Bais Hamikdash. Imagine Hashem's house. Indeed, you could bring a golden leaf. Indeed, you could bring a golden vine. So what was the exaggeration? The exaggeration was that it says it took 300 kohanim to move it. That's too much. 300 people to move one ornament, to move one item. Think about it. Even a tremendous door, even something extremely heavy, 10 people, 20 people, 300 people. That part was the exaggeration. And finally, the third case, the third case was Paroches. What's the case with the exaggeration of the Paroches? Says the Gemara. We are 4 lines from the Tapuach of Tassim Beis, the Tanan. Rashba Goimer says Rav Shimon Gamliel Mishum Rav Shimon Askan, in the name of Rav Shimon Askan, which is actually very interesting that Rav Shimon Gamliel is quoting Rav Shimon, who was a Kohen Gadol himself. So if you want to quote something about the Bais Hamikdash, an incredible source, Mishum Rav Shimon Askan, Paroches, the Paroches that separated between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim was of your tefach. His thickness was a tefach. Al shivin ushnayim nimin ne'ereges. It was woven from 72 different strands, 72 threads made up the weave. Va'al kol nima v'nima esrim v'araba'a chutin. It was 24 strands, which if you think about it is absolutely wild. To give you a perspective, if you take your tzitzis are 8 strings, which are really 4 strings, right? Each string of your tzitzis is not one. If you take your tzitzis and you slowly, gently twist it, you'll notice that really your tzitzis is made up of multiple strings. Everyone know what I'm talking about? If I go like this and I keep on untwisting it, I'll see that each string is made up of about 3 or 4 little strings. And that's why my tzitzis have some thickness to it. Okay, so if I were to take 72 strands of this type of thickness, it would be pretty thick. But they took 24 strings woven into each string, and then 72 of those strings were woven together to form the Paroches. Absolutely incredible. And that's why the thickness was a tefach. A tefach is about 8 inches. That means there's a curtain about so thick. The curtain was almost the thickness of a wall. How thick do you think a wall is? This wall on the side over here is probably not even a tefach thick, right? And a curtain woven that wall was that thick. Absolutely incredible. Okay, but we didn't get the exaggeration yet. That was a din. That everyone agreed to, and that was absolutely emes. But continues the Mishkan Shkalim. Arka, the length of this curtain was 40 amos. Why 40 amos? That's the height of the entrance to the Eichel, about 60 feet, some about. V'rachva esrim amo, and the width was 20 amos. Umishmoinim ushtayim ribua naasis, and it was made at the cost of shmoinim ushtayim ribui, 80 to 10,000, which is 820,000 gold dinarim was the cost to make the Paroches. And how many Paroches do they make? You think, okay, such a cost, 820,000. They made one in history. No. Ushtayim oisim b'chol shana v'shana. And every single year, they made 2 curtains. Okay, we didn't get to the exaggeration yet. So far, everything has been the din. But the Mishnah now says, Shalosh meyois kahanim matbilin oisa. If you have to toivel this curtain, this massive 60 feet by, I don't know, what's the width? The width is about 40 feet, 60 feet by 40 feet, this massive curtain like a wall. If you have to toivel it in the mikvah, why would you have to toivel it? Let's say it became tamei. It says they needed 300 people to toivel it. That was the exaggeration. As big as a wall something might be, 300 people, again, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, 300 people, that was the exaggeration. Okay, so those are all the cases of guzmais that we've seen throughout Shas. And now we continue. We're at the 2 dots, approximately 15 lines down. Chavtes Amid Beis. Says the Gemara, quoting the Mishnah, Heichelu, we are now arranging the different pyres, the different fires, the different wood log cabin fires on top of the Mibei'ach. Says the Mishnah, as the Gemara now quotes, Heichelu, and we know that this word Heichelu, an interesting word. You have to add in a taf. It's the same word as Hischilu. They began, Heichelu, what would they do? Malin begazirin. They would raise up the gazirin, these logs, l'sader es hamaracha, to arrange the fire on top of the Mibei'ach, v'chulu. Chutz, and the Mishnah taught you're allowed to use all types of wood. Aside for what type of wood are you not allowed to use? Chutz mishal zayis mishal gefen. You're not allowed to use wood of the olive tree or wood of the grapevine. The question is why? Says the Gemara, Hani my taima. What is the reason that wood of eitz, wood of zayis, wood of gefen is not allowed to be used? Says the Gemara, 2 reasons. Rapapa Amar Misham de Katri. It's because they have thick knots inside the wood. Who cares if they have thick knots inside the wood? A thick knotted wood makes the wood not burn as properly, makes all that it gives off a lot of smoke, and therefore you cannot use such wood. Ravacha bar Yankiv Amar Misham yishuv of the Eretz Yisroel. The reason why you're not allowed to use trees of zayis, trees of gefen, because even though they're not concerned about how it burns, there's a different problem. The problem is, what happens if you have to constantly be cutting down trees for the Bais Hamikdash? You're cutting down olive trees, you're cutting down grapevine trees. You have no olive trees left in the Bais Hamikdash. You have no grapevine trees left in the Bais Hamikdash. And therefore, he did not allow them to use such trees for the wood on top of the Mibei'ach. Let's finish up right over here. As the Gemara now says, Meisvei, we'll end off with one last kasha. The Gemara says, quotes a pasuk in Vayikra that says, Ala eitzim asher ala ish. The pasuk says that what wood should be used on the Mibei'ach, Ala eitzim asher ala ish. The wood that was on the fire. Says the Gemara, we darshan this pasuk, eitzim hani toichem liyois ish. That what type of wood do you have to use? Wood that is nitoichem, that is completely burnt, liyois ish, and it becomes fire. And what type of wood is that? Umaynihu Dukra shvod deloy katri. This is branches of shvod, of skewers, which what? Deloy katri. Does not get knots. V'asli mikdar mitoichoi. Does not get knots from within. And the Brisa over there continues and says, yes, kol ha'esik v'sheirim chutz min hazayis v'gefen. Aval be'ilu, this should sound familiar. We quoted this in the Mishnah. Be'ilu hayu regilim, with what? B'nebuyoi shalteina, with branches of the fig tree. Shal egois v'shal eitz shemen. Rav Lazar meisev av shal mayish v'shal alon v'shal dekel v'shal charav v'shal shikma. We'll pick it up from here tomorrow. But basically, just to speak out what the kasha is, as we see that this Brisa gave emphasis that what was the nikudah, what was the detail that was necessary when it came to the wood. It was all about the katri, it was all about the knots. So we had two different opinions why you cannot use zayis, why you cannot use gefen. So according to the opinion of knots, we understand, but according to the other opinion, that's going to be the kasha. We'll pick it up from here, b'siyata d'shmaya, in the next shiur.